This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. I'm excited for all of you guys today because this guy is awesome. I had a chance to be on his show, and I cannot wait to have him on. Lance Essihos is the host of the University of Adversity podcast, which is ranked top 50 on iTunes worldwide and number 5 in Entrepreneur Magazine's top 20 podcasts that will help you grow in 2020 list, as well as top 21 podcasts to expand your mind in 2021 in Business Insider magazine. After a whirlwind of major obstacles, Lance has pivoted his mindset to view adversity as a necessary ally to fulfillment and personal development. Lance now works to foster unity in allying adversity through his podcast, production company, and now an upcoming book. My brother, what is happening?
What's up, man? Thanks so much. Appreciate that intro.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Even though I asked you about the last name, and I know I said Essihos, I meant Essihos, but you know what? You're just a good dude overall. So
I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice because like I'm so used to hearing different pronunciations. It's like anything close is I'm happy. And I didn't even notice, to be honest with you. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
It's truly my pleasure. So I guess we'll start with, rarely is it people are like, yes, adversity, I love it. This is truly how I'm going to grow. Tell the audience kind of your 5-minute story, if you will, to how you came to accept adversity as being such not only a challenge, but something that we require for growth.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, it's such an area that I've been focusing on with writing this book right now, is really like understanding what that means. And the real thing that I'm discovering and is to be able to change your perspective on adversity. And I was actually this morning writing about the before and after as to like where I was to how I look at it now. And it's really coming to an understanding that it's coming no matter what. Adversity, the struggle, the challenges, all of that stuff is coming. So you have an opportunity to make a choice. That's literally what it is. And some people they jump in and they react and they don't really choose because subconsciously they're just so used to reacting. And to kind of go back to my story, that was the way I was conditioned. I grew up in a family where it wasn't anybody's fault, but my parents, there was just that scarcity mindset. We didn't have a lot of money. My dad did his best, put food on the table. My mom, all of that was great. But like from programming from their generation before, it was just very tight. Money was like a tight thing to talk about. And it brought a lot of stress. It brought a lot of deep programming. It brought a lot of all of it. And it eventually, split up my family. And, I went on a journey. Me and my dad moved across the country away from my mom and all my family. So that's when things got really challenging. Again, like this is the stuff that I'm going into around like unpacking my story. And I just love the question because every time I go into it, it gets a little bit clearer for me, which means I can add more value. And, so that challenge of like leaving family and, my dad met this crazy woman with 4 kids and it was just like right out of a movie. It was just like moving, new place, new woman. What? You're taking my dad away? And then I went to a school, I was getting bullied. It was like the perfect recipe for disaster. And, that was the way it was. I was also a hockey player. So that was the one bonus. I look back, I think like, wow, I'm so glad I had hockey because it allowed me to at least have that when I was struggling because I was good at it. Prior to that, I was a really good hockey player. We'll just leave it at that. And through those teenage years, there was a lot of like trauma that I developed and just a lot of bullshit that I created, a lot of disbelief in my life, a lot of lack of confidence. And it led into my years, into my teenage years, which led down a toxic road of drinking alcohol, really trying to reinvent who I was. I was trying to become a hockey player, but I was like really emotionally messed up. And, that led to me, you know, trying to pursue playing professional hockey, but because of some really poor decisions and poor guidance, and, it's all, I look back, it was all my own doing. I lost that opportunity. And, I had to reinvent myself as not being the hockey player anymore, but being like, who is that after sports? This is something I talk to people a lot about, is like, who am I after that? And it was a hard pill to swallow because I felt like a nobody. I had lost all my confidence. I had really gone low into that that self-loathing. And I didn't know. I was doing my best. I was like 20 years old, right? And then from there, I played around and tried to figure that out. And I got into like the bar and restaurant industry, and that was where I was able to kind of feel like somebody again. And that was really what I was looking for, was something that had some sort of meaning for me at the time. And that led me through that for many years, many toxic situations, but many, many blessings also now when I look back. Um, and then which eventually led to, some of the hardest moments of my life, which was losing my younger brother to suicide, and then my dad just over a year later to cancer. I fully believe that losing my younger brother was the reason my dad manifested cancer in his body. He didn't know how to handle stress. My dad just couldn't cope with this stuff. So that was a big realization for me that, all right, something's got to change here. I had quit drinking for a year. I'd quit drinking for a year. So it really opened up my mind to like what was out there and how much I didn't want to be a slave to alcohol and the bar industry anymore. So that was where I started to reinvent myself and, really start to dig in, like, who am I at this point? And, that's when the transformational journey started. And it's been a ride ever since. It's not been an easy ride. I don't claim to have it all figured out, but I always share as to where I'm at. And, um, I believe it's all happening for me, not to me, just as most people. And coming back in full circle to like the perspective, that's really the thing. It's like, how do you look at it? And how my perspective was then to now is that now when I see something, yeah, it may be like, oh man, why is this happening? And I may fall off. I may become unconscious and react and get pissed off. But that's not it. It's like, how long do you sit in that before you get back on the seat, the driver's seat of empowerment, versus like the back seat victim mentality? And that's kind of where I'm at now, is like, I've become a lot more conscious as to, oh, whoa, okay, this adversity. I know what's on the other side of this because of what's happened in the past. And I know that if I can look at this and learn from this and ask the right questions, then I can get the right answers. And that is the skill in itself that isn't easy to learn, but that's where I'm at right now. And yeah, I believe my perspective has really been able to shift over the last few years.
Well, clearly it has, brother. I mean, my gosh, to have a brother do that and to lose someone I'm sure you were extremely close to, and then your dad. I mean, that's hard. I can't even imagine. I don't want to. What was, because you've brought up the idea of not reacting, but rather responding. What is your process, man? Because you're right, adversity is coming for all of us.
Yeah.
That's a guarantee. So how were you able to, outside of removing drinking from your life, how were you able to process this and have some clarity and say, not only am I not going to be a victim, I'm taking responsibility for my actions, and I'm going to actually rise and become even better than I was before in this tragic and awful time.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that I was destined to quit drinking before I lost my dad, because we lost my younger brother in 2016. I just went on an absolute tear and surprised I'm alive to this day. 2017, I went completely sober. July of 2017, my dad passed away. So I look back and I'm like, wow, it was almost like I was preparing myself without me knowing for what was coming, because there's no way I could have handled that if I was in that prior state. Like, I would have been there was so much stuff to deal with when your dad, and all the stuff, burying him, all the shit you don't ever want to worry about. And like I couldn't have done that in that state. So to answer your question, I was doing a lot of personal development work, and it was the most basic stuff that I started. And this is the only way I can explain how I shifted, was like, practicing meditation and practicing gratitude journaling. It may sound simple, and I know those are buzzwords, but sometimes the simplest things that we do over time are the things that actually make the change. And, that was what I did. And I started to read a lot more meditation, got really clear, and really was grateful and paying attention to being grateful for what I had and focusing on what I have versus what I don't, even though things were challenging. So then when my dad passed, I was almost like ready for it in a weird twisted way. Like I have to handle this, but I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And when you lose when you're, there's been constant waves coming through back and forth since 2017. I'll get super emotional, and then sometimes I'm like, I'm all right. And then I'll have a laugh. And it's important to feel all those things. And now I just realized that was an opportunity for me to really look at, how am I going to react? How am I going to show up? Are you going to, what kind of man do you want to be? And I stood up to it and I faced it, and we got things done, and we moved on. And now it's like I have this feeling with inside of me from him that I know that I can handle anything. And that's the empowerment that I'm trying to teach and trying to be and live, is that we are resilient. I know the world doesn't want us to think that. The world wants to think that we need everything outside of ourselves. We're weak. We're all this stuff. And that's not true. It's not true. We have it all in us, and we are resilient. So those are the lessons that I learned. And anything since that point, whether it's happened in business, there's been a ton of adversity, ton of stuff go on. But it's just perspective that, yeah, you know what? I'll be okay. What do I got to do? Yeah, I lose it sometimes. Like I lose my temper, but it's how long do I stay in that before I'm conscious again? And that's kind of the basic tools that I used, and I still use to this day, that allowed me to kind of recenter and kind of get perspective.
Well, I like that you said, because so often you hear people say, "Oh, self-development, it's all this woo-woo, or it's soft." And the truth is, what you said is, look, I feel that pain sometimes, that my dad is not here, that my brother's not here. It's not like I overcame it and it's gone. Look, these emotions are going to come back, and that's okay to feel it. And so having the practice of meditating, I assume daily for you, practicing gratitude on a daily basis, that doesn't mean pain is not there. That just means this is a way to overcome this again. Because I imagine, and I guess my question is, it's not going away necessarily for good. Stuff's going to pop up. The shit's going to come back. And I have a process now to say, I got you. I can
Yeah.
overcome this again. Is that kind of the idea, brother?
Yeah, man. I mean, the only way out is through. And you can't positive speak yourself out of things. And positive mindset is great. I mean, of course, but positive attitude, overload of positive attitude is almost as bad as over negative. It's like, all right, I get it. But like let's fucking be real here. Like, you're going to have to feel the things, right? Feel them, honor them, but then move on. Like that's the thing. And like the only way out is through through it and to feel it. And I believe, and this is so great talking about this, because this is what I've been really thinking about writing, is like you have to be able to just accept the present moment, and is that it is what it is. And that sitting through that and then being able to move on is so important. It's not allowing yourself to get, what happens is most people, something comes, and then their whole world gets lost in that. And then it goes down a shame spiral. I suck at this. Nobody likes me. That guy's way more ahead of me. I have no money. I'm not making money. Oh man, my internet sucks. Oh, COVID sucks. And it's like, that's what happens. but the reality of it is like, we have to be mindful as to like, when does that come? All right, this sucks, but that's it. Let's go. And there's times to process. We do shadow work. I do a lot of stuff around going back into trauma and talking to and realizing, and feeling the stuff. You give that a time and place, but there isn't always a time and place for that in the middle of your day when you got to be on it. You got to be responsible and mindful of your thoughts. Things come, boom, I catch it. All right, yeah, that sucks. What are we going to do? All right, let's move on. And then later, if you want to go over the stuff that came up and you want to give it more time, I recommend doing that. I mean, you got to process that too. But I really believe the way to really move forward is to be able to see it, observe it, and then just move on. That's the only way. But so many people get lost in that thought loop, and then it's just off to Pluto. It's just like, see you later. And then your whole day unravels, right? It's like, even in meditation, this is the lesson in meditation. It's like, every time you're in it and you go out, it's coming back in. That's a win. Boom, you won. You go out, that's okay. You start thinking about the craziness of the world. Oh, boom, you're back. All right. That's a win. It's like a bicep curl for your brain. But that's what it's like, and that's what it trains you to do in everyday life. It's like, yeah, I'll go off a little bit, but how do I bring myself back? How do I bring myself back to that alignment? And I think that's the key, man. When you have that intention for what you want to do, it's like, is this in alignment right now? No, well, let's get back. And that's not an easy thing to do. It's a process.
Well, I want to get into the idea of mastering adversity, because again, you spend a lot of time on this, and what I'm hearing is, because you have chosen this path of talking so much about things that potentially could suck in life or do suck in life, you have found an ability to master something that most people are just inherently afraid of. They don't want to deal with this nasty shit that's coming. So talk to me a bit about mastering adversity, brother. Is
Yeah.
it because you've spent so much time not shying away from the pain, all the bad stuff that hits you, the emotions that you have to process through? Is that part of mastering adversity?
Yeah, and the reason I calling it mastering versus master is that it's always going to be a journey. Nobody's ever going to master it fully, like it's like, you're going to there's the Dr. Joe Dispenza said this as well, and I forget if I butchered the words or not, but as you elevate, the level of your problem, the level of your challenges will elevate. That's evolution, right? Like, as you grow, well, so will your problems. It's like, the more money, more problems, but you get better at dealing with it, right? And then sometimes the thing that used to bother you is like a joke. You're like, that doesn't even bother me. But like, with mastering adversity, I've just been fascinated because that word, and the podcast University of Adversity, it was something that I was like, man, this is important. Because for me, I needed to get inspired to move, and I'm not meaning raw motivation. I'm like, I need to hear stories of other humans that maybe have done worse, that have gotten through it. That was what really lit me up. So that's to be honest with you, it was just a natural progression that I loved inspirational stories. I loved learning about people that beat the odds. I loved it because there's something there. Like, what is the thing? And I believe that it is how you deal with the adversity. How do you deal with it? Like, when you get knocked down, what's your process? Like, what is that? And that's what I love to ask, and that's what I love to learn, is like, everybody has a different take, and some people have to learn the lesson a lot more. And the book is really just, it's a guidance of like my story, my journey, tied into like the tools, tips, resources, and tying in past guests, past stories that pertain to what I'm talking about. And it's like a nice synergistic effect of the podcast, and really just painting the picture that I want to be able to provide a resource for somebody like, man, I'm going through adversity. Like, what do I do? Oh, this guy's been through it. I'll just pick up this book and look through it, and like, just resonating that, trying to resonate with people that I don't have it all figured out, but like, hopefully you can relate Hopefully you can relate, and then you can trust me enough that we can go on the journey together. And then there's plenty of people that are more successful than me that you can check out from the podcast. And that's kind of the idea. And like, I really want to figure that out. And because you're right, I chose this path. I feel like I've been tested in many ways as to figure out what are the best modalities for healing trauma. What are the best ways to get through this stuff? And I've done it. I've done plant medicine. I've done, yoga, Joe Dispenza meditation, Tony Robbins, all the stuff. And like, I'm still going, but now I can actually look and say, okay, there's different things for everybody depending on where you're at. And the most important thing that I say is like, in order to move forward, to clear that lens, like, you have to understand your past. You have to have complete awareness of who you are. And you got to be able to be okay and forgive all the shit and the ugly parts that you don't like, and bring those to the table and understand them and go, all right, it's all right. This is who I am, but I'm going to like forgive. I'm going to heal. I'm going to do the things. As soon as you get to that point, then you're able to move forward, and then your lens becomes clear. It's not as foggy. So how you look at adversity is going to change. And that's the goal, is to change the perspective. So I hope that explains it.
No, it certainly does. And there's one common theme that keeps coming up, and I hope everybody's really hearing this, is that you mentioned if somebody has it figured out, no one has it figured out. I don't give a shit what
Yeah,
guru says they have it figured
exactly.
out. That's not a thing, right? We are all human beings that deal with
Yes.
trauma, deal with bad stuff. That's just life.
Yeah.
Now, the process and the ability to overcome it, to find these, as you mentioned before, listen, meditation, gratitude, that may sound basic, but you hear that again and again and again from people that are leading positive, happy lives.
Mm.
So I talk to me a bit about the plant medicine, because this has come up with several times on the show. And I think so often people don't understand what that is, whether it's ayahuasca. I was actually just talking to my dentist. He's going to go down and do Gaboda. I may say
Iboga.
Iboga. Thank you.
Oh, that's even more power. That's a grandfather medicine. That's no joke, man.
Yeah. So if you can't just touch on, maybe this isn't necessarily
Yeah.
your expertise, but you
No,
have
I
experience.
love it. I mean, this is like, I feel a lot of people have come to me about this. I feel like I've been a bridge to help people understand the basics of it. So I'm grateful you asked this question, because I think it's important. I, by all means, don't have it all figured out. And that's what I love. I just wanted to kind of pick up what you said there, is like, I think a lot of people are just trying to figure out how to be the most visually look like they have it all figured out in the best way, but realize everybody's trying to figure it out, man. And that's the thing. Like, the more humble you are, if somebody can resonate with you, then you're good. Like, I just think there's too many people trying to act like they have it all figured out. So thank you for bringing that up. Um, Plant medicine has been one of these things that I was called to, and I would highly recommend that anybody that's thinking about it, if you're hearing this, chances are there's a reason. That's part of being called to it. It's coming into your awareness, so pay attention. Um, but it is something that you have to be called to, I believe. And I've just been fascinated by. I first learned about it from my mentor, Aubrey Marcus, and I learned about I learned about it through his podcast, and Joe Rogan and all of that. And I found it really interesting, the mystical side of like this plant medicine stuff and how it can like make you think differently. And I had done magic mushrooms when I was a kid and whatever, but I didn't understand it. And then particularly ayahuasca was something that I was fascinated by. And I sat with it for 4 nights in Costa Rica. And it was really, really powerful. Like, to the point where, it was some of the, I say the quote that came to me when I finished, it was a symphony of dark and blissful chaos. Like, it was just so dark and so beautiful. It's like, you can't even explain it. But the way psychedelics work in the simplest form is that it'll it'll expose your subconscious and stuff that's in your psyche, and it'll show it to you in ways that you can't control. So this is why it's really important that I believe people should have like a meditation practice, or at least start with like some mushrooms or something to like at least get the feeling going of what it feels like to let go. So the key is like letting go. Because your ego wants to do all the things and control the things. When you're in the plant medicine or psychedelic state, that's a no because it's just going to cause a lot of stress. So you want to be able to let go. What happens is when you go into these medicines, sometimes people don't want to let go. So when something dark or something challenging comes in, it's like, oh shit, I want to get out of here. And you panic and it's really hard. So that you're forced to face the shit that you don't want to face in the simplest terms. And ayahuasca will show you things that maybe you didn't even know about. It'll also show you beautiful things. It'll also give you insight. But be prepared and do your research because you will be shown things that will challenge you. Like, and you can't escape it. You have to sit through it. And what it comes down to is the simplest lesson. Go back to gratitude. Thank you. What is this teaching me? Why am I scared of this? What is this coming into my awareness for? Like asking the question, being curious versus why is this happening? Oh my God. And that's where you can go down these spirals of like getting scared. And trust me, it's no fun when you do that. Your breath and just a sense of curiosity and gratitude will help you get through this stuff. But that's why it's powerful. That's why it can be more powerful than meditation and stuff like that, because it'll force you to look at that stuff. It's almost like a hack. Like you don't have to sit in hours of meditation to get there. I recommend doing that also, but some people, if you feel called, do it. And that'll really teach you how to surrender, which helps you surrender in the real world too, to let go and stop trying to be a control freak and that kind of stuff. So yeah, man, it's powerful. And I had some of the most powerful experiences of my life in that in January. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much sum it up, like you'll have to look at the stuff that you may not want to look at. And it's healing. So you'll get to the bottom of a lot of the healing that may be challenging in other ways.
Well, I will say this. I've had, I think, 4 or 5 guests now on the show that have all talked about their experience with ayahuasca, and no one, and countless others, I would say 30 to 40 people I've talked to, not one human being has told me of a bad experience doing it. So the control thing, which is interesting, and this is why I think it's so interesting that anyone that's done it says plant medicine specific to it is not a drug. And is that distinction, I think for some of like myself, that would be a hang up, right? The drug thing would be like, but when you say plant medicine and so much beauty does come from it, I don't know if it's a statement or a question, but any thoughts to that? Because that's what I hear a lot of is, man, that's a drug. I'm not doing that. That's just not my thing. But
Mm.
I've literally not heard one person have a bad experience with it.
That's the problem with the English language, is that one word can group so many things into the same thing. And that's the problem with this specifically, is that drugs have this like dirty, like smoking crack on the streets in 1981 or something, like has this weird feeling to it. And it's just not the case because yeah, that stuff, there's drugs, street drugs that are terrible for you, that will destroy you. I mean, the number one most harmful drug in the world is legal alcohol. I mean, we all drink. That's the thing that's so hard to wrap our head around, is that stuff is, it's just because we've been conditioned, and we've been conditioned to be okay with that. But then because this other stuff was called drugs, it's like it's the same. But magic mushrooms are like probably I think they're rated, psilocybin is like the least dangerous out of anything, yet it can be so powerful and affect you so much. And ayahuasca, it's the same. Like it's medicine. It really is healing your body. And I think we're getting to the point now where people are starting to realize, because there's certain time and place for this stuff for healing. There's also people that abuse it too, but it's really important to have an open mind for these kind of conversations, because if you want to look at science, you want to look at data, like there's tons of it, right? And it's becoming, there's story after story. And yet, look, not everybody needs this stuff. I'm not saying plant medicine is for everybody. It's definitely not, but it could be useful if there's stuff that you need to work through. And yeah, I just think we need to get away from like grouping them all together. And I think it's happening, I think it's happening. The more we talk about it, the less taboo it gets. I think even, the more we talk about ayahuasca and stuff like that, people kind of like put their guard down. But you're right. It's the drug thing. It's like we've got it's like this like creepy word that's like grouping them all together. And um but yeah, they're definitely different, man. Totally different.
Well, the ability to access the subconscious. Look, some of the most famous works, movies that we've seen, books that have been written have happened through psychedelics, whether it's the dirty drug word or plant medicine.
Yeah.
That is just now becoming a little bit more acceptable because, again, to get to that level, to access something that is in there anyway, right? And you talked about the
Yeah.
hardwiring early from traumas that happened in your childhood. That's what you're able to access, is my understanding. Again, I've
Yeah.
never done it,
Yeah.
but it has been calling me a lot lately, brother. So I have a feeling it's coming down my path. I want to go back for a moment, and I want to talk about your identity as a hockey player, because so frequently, and this happened for me as well, once my hoop career was done, once I was done being an athlete, what am I? Now, how do we not identify so much with something, even if that's, let's say, you know what, Lance, you are a badass podcast host, but let's say podcasts are gone tomorrow. I think you're far more equipped now to say, cool, no problem, and move on. How are you able to do that? Because those listeners right now, something is going to take it away from you. And whether, and think of the worst things in the world. You're no longer a husband because now you're divorced, or an athlete because you got hurt. How did you do that, brother? And what can you shed light on so other people can shed those identities?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I've had to reinvent myself with a few different personas. I went from the hockey guy to the bartending guy to the entrepreneur guy, podcast guy, and now author guy. Like it's just like it's what's funny is that I don't think we need to ever eliminate that part of us. This is what I've been working on, is like understanding that part of us is why we're here, and bringing them all together, and having them all dance together, because there's a reason you went through that, it ended, you started something else. And I'm proud of all of it. I did a lot of dumb shit, but I'm proud of it because it's got me to where I am today. I have to be grateful for that. I made the choices that I made. And yeah, I just think as we go through these things, we just we put ourselves in these boxes that if I don't make it in this thing, then I'm a failure and I have to start from scratch. And this is not the case. And I guess now, because, and you can probably relate, it's because your mission is about making impact and how you make people feel, that if we lost everything, man, like it doesn't really matter, because people are always going to need, they're always going to need to raise their spirits. They're always going to need somebody that can inspire them. They're always going to need that. And the work that we both do, you can't take that away from us. And like, that's real impact. So like the podcast was taken away, everything. I'm like, oh, well, okay, well, like whatever. And I guess when your mission or your purpose is too wrapped up in yourself, and maybe like your ego, and not enough about making a long lasting impact, then it's going to hurt when it ends, you know? But if your vocation or your mission has something bigger than you, then you're already planting seeds, and those seeds will be there. That's what I can see, because I think we're too attached to that thing. I need to be that or it's over. It's like, well, no, it's not. And that's pretty much the way I look at it now. It's like, however I need to bend, however I need to pivot, I'm okay with it. I've had to do it so many times. Like, be nice to people, build good relationships, man, like that's all you can do. And the right thing will come. I mean, you can probably agree with me, like podcasting and this kind of thing, and just building relationships on the daily, like that is the best thing you can do for anything. because no matter what happens, like you have those relationships and you're building and cultivating those. So like your identity of what you do doesn't matter as much. It's more about the impact you're making.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, this is such a gift, far more for me than my audience. I truly believe I am blessed by being able to do this.
Same.
Isn't that amazing, brother? It was not my intent, and it is 100% what I've discovered. I want to talk about a specific subject and a word that you've used several times, and I think it's tied in with personal growth. The word is surrender, because that is a big one. And the other part to that question, it's a two-part question. You've mentioned several different Aubrey Marcus, Joe Dispenza, Joe Rogan, Tony Robbins. You're open to not just one idea, but so many ideas. So did the word surrender come through that process of self-development, which also sometimes gets negative connotation, which is crazy, but it does?
Mm.
And why are you so open to so many voices, and how do you find them? Because if I have one audience member sitting on the sideline going, I don't know about personal development, man. I heard it's not for me.
Mm.
What could you say to that, brother? Because you've said that word, and that is such an important word to me. And so many of the people that have inspired you have been helpful to others. What could you say to this group sitting on the sidelines?
Man, I love that. So, okay, this whole journey really started with Joe Rogan. So I'll just kind of tie together. Joe Rogan led me to Aubrey Marcus, and why I liked Aubrey Marcus, and it'll get into the surrender part, but is that I enjoy learning about the spiritual path and healing path, but not from like, it was the delivery of how it was like a normal guy, an athlete, some guy that looks like me. He's talking about things that I would never listen to, but I could resonate with him. And I was like, oh man, this dude's awesome. And then I started to listen to him, and it was all about coming from a place of love. And when you can either come from love or fear. And that straight out of, there's a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. Those are the options you have: fear and love. And if you come from a place of love, you're always looking at that. Empowerment is love, right? Um, Victim mentality is fear. And once I started to resonate with that message, like there was other books and stuff like that, but like, Tony Robbins was somebody that really inspired me. So Joe Rogan educated me and led me to places. Aubrey Marcus ended up being like my mentor, spiritual mentor, really allowed me to like dive into like plant medicine and learn about what self-love really is. Tony was like an inspirational dude, like let's fucking go kind of guy, and that's what I needed too. And Joe Dispenza has been he's like taking a mystical concept of meditation that may have been a woo woo, but showing us science and data now around what is actually happening, like piles of data. And that's what I needed. So all of those together kind of constructed who I am today. And there's other things too. That's just a very simplified way. But surrender to me has, yeah, I mean, I can't remember when exactly it started, but if I can really think about it, is when you do your best and you put your intention into something and you're really going after it, then there's a certain amount of letting go. It's not doing anything, but it's like, all right, I'm going to do my best with what I have and what I do, and that's it. That's it. That's all you can do. You can't continue to beat yourself up and think of every scenario. There has to be a surrender, a letting go. And I really realized what that meant when I was in ayahuasca and when I was doing plant medicine, because you can say these words, but until you're faced with something where you have no other option. And I've done other psychedelics that, I mean, we can get into, but that have been so powerful and so scary that you have no option. You completely lose sense of self, and you have to, otherwise you'll freak the hell out. And that itself, seeing that happen in my awareness, allowed me to see that in real life. Like the lessons and the metaphors and the realizations you get in the plant medicine space aren't just there in that space. They transfer over to the real life. And you're like, oh, I get why I learned that. So the letting go and surrender was like, just trust and breathe. Trust that you got this. That's it. It's surrender is trust. It's letting go of the outcome, right? Because if we're trying to control the outcome, we almost block ourselves. That's not saying stop working. It's like do the best you can with what you have and then surrender the rest. That's all you can do. So tying in being in the psychedelic space with real life, that's how I've kind of developed that. And look, it's not always easy, man. Surrendering is like, because we want to know, we want to control, we want to, why isn't that working? Why isn't this going on? Why, and that's just the way it is. Um, but that's the best way I can describe it. It's kind of been like a mixture of people and their different ideologies kind of coming together into like a soup of like how I think now.
Well, it's one of those words, you guys spend some time on it because it is truly letting go of the control factor, just giving your best, like he said, giving everything you have, but the outcome will take care of itself, man. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that future. Give what you have today in the present moment, everything you can, and the future will take care of itself. We haven't talked much about your book, brother. I'd love to get into that for a moment, and then kind of what you have coming up, brother, because you have so many positive things you're bringing to the world, and I want to make sure that our audience knows where to find you and how to discover your book once it does come out.
For sure, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, like Mastering Adversity, it's we're working on it. The manuscript's due at the end of August. It'll be out in the new year. Really excited for that. That's going to be a powerful resource. And yeah, it's been quite the journey with that. Like we said, I'm talking about in this podcast, there's a lot of like fresh stuff that I was digging into. So it's like you're getting some taste of what I'm talking about in the book, and just really how to help you guys change your perspective on it at the simplest thing. That's what I just want. If you can pick up the book, read it. Oh, I think a bit differently in this direction. Perfect. I've done my job, and that's it. I'm not trying to make you change your entire life, but shift your perspective so that you see things from an empowered perspective versus victim perspective. And that's work. That takes time, but it's a commitment. And then, just working on the podcast, man, we're also doing some courses right now. I'm working on a course called Warrior Embodiment, and it's a mini course. And I've really been paying attention more on really wanting to grow the University of Adversity brand through courses and the community. And it's something that I didn't really pay enough attention to. I've kind of put my podcast agency on the side. It's still servicing our normal clients, but I really want to put all my love and heart and soul into the book and into doing these courses, because when I'm filming these courses, I can really put myself into this stuff. And it's like the simplest basic stuff to help people get through the shit they're going through. And that's what we're doing, man. And the podcast, we continue to grow. We're on episode, 325 or something, and just continuing to grow. And, we're not going anywhere. I'm just going to keep, putting out content, doing my best to help inspire people to think differently, man, make different decisions, and live a more resilient life.
Well, you're doing it, man. You're inspiring so many people around the world, and I sure appreciate it. I want to know, where can our listeners connect with you online, brother? If they want to check you out, whether it's Instagram or whatever social media platform, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, come follow me on Instagram. Start there, Lance.Essihos. And in the bio, you can find the podcast University of Adversity. And I'm always grateful if you guys do go to the podcast, go listen to an episode, rate, review. I always love seeing that. Take a screenshot. It's great to see if you did get value from it. The reviews, as you know, the reviews matter, and it's nice to see. So if you guys feel called to do so, I really appreciate it. But yeah, go to Instagram and start there. Keep it super simple.
Guys, check him out. He's awesome. I had a great time on his show. As you can hear today, he has so much depth and knowledge that he can share with the world. And I want you guys to go check out his book once it comes out. It's going to be amazing. Lance, I appreciate you, man, so much for being here and just bringing the love that you do.
Oh, bro, I appreciate you having been able to connect. Too bad we couldn't do it in person, man. I mean, it just didn't work out, but grateful for you, brother. Thank you, Jam.
It's really my pleasure. And I'll get up to Canada, or hopefully you get back down to South Florida. We will absolutely do it. You guys, I truly go check him out. Lance Essihos. He is a badass. I love that dude. I want you to check out his stuff, man, for sure. Until next week, continue getting better every day. We'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.